Are you looking for GRC projects to publish and have in your portfolio to show employers? That's difficult for GRC because it's mostly spreadsheets and nerd stuff, but that's why I made GRC Assist out on GitHub. And I have a video about how you can use it too with minimal coding experience. It's super cool. Today I'm meeting with not a software engineer or a sysadmin, but an accountant turned GRC practitioner, my friend Steve McMichael, who's not only been using GRC Assist, but now taking it to the next level. So let's go get Steve and let's level up this GRC Assisted tool and make GRC so cool. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Jerry. I'm excited to show you what I've got today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And I think, you're talking about nerds. There's this book about making presentations by an accountant. Even nerds can be heard, okay? And it says you gotta have three things to be heard as a nerd. So I want to show you what I've done with your tool. One, because your tool is awesome, right? Having that repository of news is helpful when we're doing security awareness training. And quarterly, I make a security in the news slide for executive presentations. Just a really excellent capability. But now, let's take it to the next level. So the second thing is showing non-coders, right? Like I'm an accountant, IT auditor turned, I've been in GRC 5 years now and certainly exposed to engineers like you and IT administrators, but I haven't been hands-on keyboard. So I like getting that experience. And it's a lot easier now with, in particular, I'm going to show you this coding agent called Cline. That's really cool. And then the third thing is, even if viewers decide it's not for them to publish something in GitHub, this is my first project in GitHub ever, and not to get hands-on keyboard, even just understanding the underlying technology a little bit better so you can do that good GRC work, I think is helpful. So I think what I want to do is just demo the new tool, and then we can unpack a little bit how I elevated it or made it to version 2.0. Sound cool?
Yeah, I can't wait. I want to see it.
All right. So you designed the thing, and step one is we need some keywords, right? So I'm going to get you to modify what I have in the keywords file so we can have kind of a live demo.
Perfect.
So I'll pull that up here. These should look fairly familiar to you, but now the folder's called GRC News Assistant, and I'll bring up keywords. All right, so I've got it set for artificial intelligence, cyber vendors, and DeepSeek. Let's change two of those, eh? Like, what would you put as number two?
Oh, geez. Well, credit card skimming's turned into quite an attack vector lately, kind of resurging as an issue. So I would credit card skimming, and then there's a lot of talk going on right now, we can workshop the keyword, but like around digital driver's licenses and basically, you already got your credit card on your phone. They're talking about doing that in the United States and in some South American countries. So I think that would be an area to explore.
Love it. Let's see if we get any hits. I'm going to lock and load. And now we'll go into my GitHub where it kind of tells us how to use it. So first of all, I've cloned you, so thank you for that.
Woo!
And yeah, I've got my first space here. And this is cool because I'm crowdsourcing it with you. I've already crowdsourced it with some people out in the different communities, and I've already gotten some feedback. So that's kind of exciting and interesting from a learning and networking perspective. So let's see how to run it. If you go down to the usage, I've already got Fabric configured to the LLM that I want to use. So I'm going to call on a AI prompt to label and rate the articles. And then to run it, I'm in the correct directory. So now I just need to start a virtual environment. Let that go. And then let it rip. So the script is above here. Let's execute it and see what's going on. So it found 10 articles for AI, which I already ran this morning. No articles found for credit cards, and 15 articles found for the digital identity.
Nice.
So what's happening now, this is new capability. It's making calls to the Claude Haiku LLM and getting back JSON packages that take the article and give us some labels and a rating. So I think this one is B tier. I think this one has a score of 72 in terms of should I read this immediately or can it wait? So you'll see what that's all about. But basically, right now the calls are happening, and I'll let it finish,
Oh,
and we'll check out the output.
yeah. So that is a clever upgrade to the original one. So not only are you getting back stories that are relevant, which is what my tool did, but now you're classifying them into uh, efficacy or association with what actually matters. That's very cool. That's a really cool upgrade. I like that.
Totally. So it's like I saw what you were doing with having that repository of news. I knew about label and rate, and it's like, oh, those things go together really nicely.
Yeah.
But I can't label and rate a URL or just the name of the article. So how do I get more data? So actually, while this is running, why don't I just walk you through a little bit of what's going on?
So, and
So
really quick, Steve, this blog
yeah,
post is public. People can go look at this.
100%. Yeah, I already shot it out in early preview to the AI ML channel in Simply Cyber Discord.
Nice.
And what I'm showing here is that this was how I ran your tool. So I get a keyword, the title, description, and the URL. After things run, you get the rating and why it rated that way, the score, and a one sentence summary of the article. So I think it's run. So I'll show you that in real time here. So GRC data rated CSV. And I've been running it for a few days. So today is Feb 4th. And this morning I ran it with some different keywords. AI and cybersecurity vendors. February 4th. Yeah. And then we've just changed them to include, it did AI again, but then it brought in your digital identity. And let's see if there's anything we should read right away. No A's and one C, but that's the idea, is that now we can be more selective in what we want to do security awareness, what we want to consume, because there's so
Well,
much content out there, right? And that's a problem to solve.
yeah, and I really like it too because with my original tool, because now I'm thinking about like what are the gaps and what pain points does it solve. With my original tool, it would return all these, and then I would have to look at them and discern whether or not I can, essentially extract some type of value that I can, give to my end users in my organization. With this one, if you get say no A's and C's or something, I feel like okay, I've got to go back and rethink my keywords or maybe pivot a little bit instead of spending an hour going through a bunch of articles that have really no value, or I could find greater value from another article with a different keyword. So brilliant, brilliant.
Well, yeah, and I think that in any type of knowledge work, it could be accounting, it can be GRC, it can be software engineering. It's a process of code, capture, organize, distill, and express. And we got to think about what prompts and what AI integration we want at each phase. And so right now we're kind of at the capture and organize phase. There's too much content to consume. If I had an army of interns or like of AI calls, right? What would, how can they help in that phase? And then like my face melted when I saw that this thing actually worked, okay? And so it's like I've also used this Cline AI assistant to write the code to make that capability happen. And
Mhm.
then, there's further things we can do to, distill and express, but that's what it's all about, is finding those discrete problems and thinking about how to augment or improve with it. So I think, is it okay if I'll show you a little bit more background of putting it together?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well, and I feel like for people watching this right now, if you just want to use it, you can go to the blog post in the description below, download it, follow the steps to install it, and just use it. But if you'd like to expand a little bit of, under the hood or get a little bit of that technical acumen, especially if you're a GRC person who is a little weak on the technical side, this will be a great little, dive, if you will, with Steve to understand how this particular piece of code works, which is great because you see what the output is of it.
Exactly. And I think that's how I framed it up here in my little intro. So it's like, to see the steps I followed to modify the script, the details are all below. That's kind of how I built the thing. But if you just want to let her rip, you follow these instructions and you're off to the races. So to get the end result as quickly as possible, step by step by step through the README. So I think I'll just talk a little bit about how the project was organized and attacked, and
Mm,
then you can think about how you would apply that to projects of your own.
perfect.
So I knew about your open source project on GitHub, and I also knew about 2 other ones, okay? And I'll show you what those were. I use this Cline plugin I'll tell you about, and then I use some certain patterns and API calls, but you can toggle those to Anthropic, Grok, OpenAI, whatever you'd like. So step 1, I installed your GRC Assist client and got it to work. And then I installed this thing called NP4K extractor. So like, what's that all about, and who cares? Well, it takes URLs and it outputs files like this. So it took each article and it gave me the title, the keywords, and the summary. So now I have some metadata and in some cases the content of the article to label and rate. So I needed that piece. And then I installed Cline and I said, hey man, or lady, or AI, whatever, my coworker now, I'm trying to consolidate 3 open source GitHub projects. How do I do it? Okay. And it's highly rated and it came highly recommended, and I was impressed with how it worked. But the thing is, we have this saying in finance, you know enough to be dangerous. Okay. And it usually means, like, if we're talking about doing tax, okay, it's like, oh yeah, I can help the tax team. I can do the taxes, but it's like, well, you're probably going to want to be supervised by a real expert because you could probably do something dangerous or something
Yeah.
that goes wrong in that space. Like, do you ever use that in engineering, Jerry, or in security? I know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, for sure, especially if you're more hands-on keyboard, like, yeah, for sure in engineering, like when you're configuring network rules or firewall rules. I mean, the impact is immediate if you block something that shouldn't be blocked. It's not like it slowly rolls
Right.
out. It's like full on broke, and phones are ringing and everything like that. But don't worry, like, I know how ACLs work. I know how to put them in, but like, you don't know that they execute in this order or that it's separated to this VLAN or something like that. And yeah, you know enough to put the rules in place, but you don't know enough about, the bigger picture of how it's going to impact the production. So yeah, 100%. In fact, I'd argue, Steve, everybody that works in IT has a story, right? Like within your first
I was just going there. I've heard you ask
everyone's
that.
got an oopsie in production, and it's typically 6 months into your first IT role, which is about corresponds with where you know enough to be dangerous, and then you do something.
No, exactly. And I think there's all sorts of opportunities and risks that AI brings. And when I was able to do this capability, I never was able to do before. It was like, whoa, I got to be careful. I got to be responsible. And certainly, as we look at how the risk landscape is evolving, we got to watch out for poorly written applications. And so, for me, it's amateur hour, and I need to do lots of checks and reviews. But I think it's not a reason not to do it, and it's just something to wield that capability responsibly. And then, as pointed out by John V in the Simply Cyber Discord, here are some specific problems or concerns when you're getting into augmenting code development, is that it can be insecure, it can have vulnerabilities, right? And that can cause a host of problems. And then also it can be used for evil instead of for good. And so there's a lot more, this is a big, complex, and growing topic. So it's just so fascinating to jump in, which of course led me to your other video on the MIT AI risk repository. And of course I made like a little analysis, then I piped it through my tooling here to kind of break down the human and AI and other type risks using that framework. And certainly there were hits, okay, when I said, hey, what are the relevant AI risks that are cataloged in your database? All sorts, and here they are. So Jerry, from your perspective, when it gets into AI augmented code, it's like you can't stop it from happening. But what are your thoughts in terms of the risks and opportunities that brings?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, humans, you say like, these poorly built apps and stuff like that. I mean, humans make poorly built apps, right? Like, you want to talk about someone who knows enough to be dangerous. Like, I used to be a professional software engineer, and I haven't done it in 20 years, but I know enough to put some code together and cobble it together and everything like that. But, even pre-AI, like insecure code was being developed. So with AI, yeah,
It's true.
you know what I mean? Like it is going to push more people to create things and have insecure code. But, I do feel like there's an opportunity there. Like I hadn't even thought of it myself until just now. But like if I do use AI to write any code, which I have done sparingly for certain like niche things, it wouldn't hurt to say, oh, and can you ensure that it is written in a secure code design way? Just, AI can add that. Why not? Right. So I think there's an
Right.
opportunity to actually write more secure code if you just include one additional conjunction to the prompt, if you will.
I like that, and I think so. That's interesting, though. You're pointing out it's already a big problem, and
Oh yeah,
maybe
it's
introducing more
horrible. Yeah,
complexity to it.
that's why we have
Probably.
jobs, Steve, because code is broken.
But dude, it's just accelerating so much, and it's so big and complex. And looking at the NIST AI risk management framework, it really talks about it's kind of an equal balance of it's the risks and opportunities, and we can't stop it, so we need to keep moving with it. So I think that's kind of the bottom line,
Yes, the genie is out of the bottle, the toothpaste is out of the tube.
right?
You
The
know.
peas in the pool, you can't
Yep.
get it out. So yeah, so this was just I made a PDF of the mind map there with all of these risks enumerated from that MIT database, and then now it's like, okay, I'm going to go for it. So let's talk to the thing. Okay. And so you can see here, I said, this was a specific portion of the conversation. It was longer, but it's like, hey, can you please include another CSV output file? Because I need that to input into NP4K extractor, right? So basically, I fire up the chatbot. You can see my past chats with him. And, actually, why don't I just show you how it works right now? Okay. So it's configured to use the Anthropic API with Sonnet,
Can
and
I interrupt for just a second?
please, yeah,
Is this application Cline, or is Cline the AI that you're interfacing with?
Cline, right? It's an application. Okay, so other options to do augmented coding, it's all together as an IDE and the co-pilot or the coding assistant, right? In this case, it is a open source GitHub project called Cline that is a plugin to Visual Studio Code. And then you can toggle where you want to point it to be your LLM to power it. Now, with Anthropic, it does a really good job. If I were to change it to the cheaper Haiku, for example, there are some kind of limitations and probably its performance isn't as good. And also, if I compared it to OpenAI, same deal. Like none of these really worked. But the one that worked for me was the one recommended, I think, in their GitHub, which was the Anthropic one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and then, so I published this out there, and I thought, they said, hey, cool project. I love that you're talking about Fabric. Did you know that you don't need to invoke Fabric? Okay. You can just go directly to the any of your favorite API calls to OpenAI or whatever to do that label and rating. So I actually don't know how to do that, and I've never done it before, but I had the idea like in the last hour to try that. Or are there any instructions that you'd like me to ask Cline in terms of taking it for a test spin?
No. I was merely wanting to understand because I hadn't seen an IDE or an integrated development environment where the code is and you can run it, where there is the chat window with the AI on the side. That
Oh,
is
I see.
really to me that's a new function that I haven't seen before. That's why I was asking.
Oh, cool, dude. Yeah, so it was as easy as going into the extensions place, and last time I showed you Mark Map, and this time it was this one.
Very cool. Yeah. So it is super convenient, super easy, and it looks like a nice clean environment with your quote unquote co-pilot.
Yeah, and it came highly recommended. I don't know anything, man. So you tell me what you think. So I'm gonna say, how can I modify GRC to directly label and rate the content instead of invoking Fabric? Now, I haven't given it the prompt for label and rate, but let's just see what happens. So also, there's this concept of plan versus act. So you check and control each step and you kind of see the output, which I think is helpful in not driving off the rails. Okay.
Yeah,
So I want to
that's
read
cool.
this file. Approved. So they made that process to call Fabric, remove that dependency. It's kind of coming up, I guess, with its own rating logic. Would you like me to proceed with these changes? Sure. I'll start by modifying it to implement direct content analysis, remove the fabric-related code. So it was a lot of lather, rinse, repeat, but you get an idea of how it works. And
Oh yeah, no,
the
and
proof is in the
like
pudding.
it,
The thing
that
worked.
that that'll feel very familiar to GRC professionals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I gave you a shout out here, well, like I always do. Simply Cyber GRC mantra, lather, rinse, repeat.
Yep. Yep.
Every
It's great.
time you make a mistake and it sucks, it hurts, okay? But then you figure out what went wrong, you correct course, and you go up and up and up. And that way you're not floundering around. You are, every day showing up and moving up into the right.
Yep. 1%
All right,
better.
man. So one of the ideas that I had was, let's take this output that came from, kind of from Anthropic, and let's review it with Gemini, right? So I used the explain code fabric pattern. I went into Gemini, and it kind of spit out an explanation of what it considered the script to be doing, and I thought that was kind of helpful as a check. It criticized a little bit that I was using fabric and copy and paste into it, because that's how I did as a human. But it didn't say, "Oh yeah, there's a subtle backdoor that is calling, you know, South Carolina or whatever."
I mean, I love
So
the constructive feedback, but I think it's funny how you stated that it was criticizing you. Like it's got it's like, oh, you silly meatbag. Like
that's right.
AI knows what's going on.
What? Yeah, I think, man, I want to talk about the AlphaGo story in the coming wave, but let's do that another time
Hmm.
in terms of machines being smarter than humans in certain areas. All right, and then a human review. Like you said, hey, it'd be cool, Steve, to see the diff. It's like, well, everything changed because it took 3 projects and jammed them together. But I did consider that, and I did review it, and it seemed logical. So bottom line, it's impressive. Be careful, and try it yourself. And then, okay, and then I've got this thing about coding responsibly. But I don't know. Any questions or feedback, Jerry, based on what I've shown you in terms of how I tried to make a new GRC Assist script?
Well, so here's a piece of feedback, and we're doing this a live show right now, right? Steve, the next logical thing I would do is say to Cline, like, hey, listen, if it doesn't already know, prompt it to say, hey, the whole point of this software is to make it so GRC professionals can move quick and do awareness and all that. Like, basically capture what it is, then ask Cline, based on what GRC professionals do for businesses, what would you recommend as additional features, not coded, but just additional
Nice.
features to level up
Yep.
this code? And then, basically pick from what it says and say, well, update the code to include that function. And like, basically just like GRC News Assistant plus plus in like a matter of minutes with this thing. That's what I would do next.
Exactly. And I love that that's like a microcosm of this bigger arms race. Okay. So they're doing that for like power plants and
Yeah.
data centers, and but it's like, well, you zoom in really close to my news for my GRC, but it's the same theme, right? Is how can I be continually training and elevating with my AI assistant here?
Yeah. Well, and I want to point out, it's like, you can use AI for anything. Like, don't think it needs to be some grand
Right.
unifying solution that solves E equals MC squared. You know what I mean? Like, it's not taking us to Mars, or it might take us to Mars, but like, it can also help you do GRC better. You know what I mean? So like, it really just should be utilized in every facet if you can.
That's the Swiss Army knife theme. Let's talk about that in another module. Now, if I told you that I, as a non-coder, was able to develop the capability to scrape all 700 of the videos on your YouTube channel, would you believe me? And would you think, oh, well, that's a little bit dangerous? Or would you think, oh, no, no big deal. It's all at public, or I don't know. What are your thoughts with that?